Hi everyone, I'm Allison. Thank you for joining me for I'm from 180 with Artemis. What have you been reading? I read The Man Who Could Move Clouds by Ingrid Rojas Contreras for our book club. And it's all about her sort of family and their relationship to magic, and her grandfather and her mother are shamans, and memory and magic and Colombia, the country. And it's a beautiful book. The Man Who Moved Clouds. Artemis, let me invite you. I hope everyone is doing not easy time. Um, let's see. What else? Hello. Oh,
Hello.
turn your camera around.
Oh, shoot. I won't
Oh,
be able to see. Oh,
there you
okay, there we
are.
go.
For some reason, they've changed it so that defaults to it being turned the other way, Instagram, which I find very annoying because I have no idea who uses it that way.
Yeah, like if I had turned around my camera, I wouldn't have been able to see any of
Right.
what I was
It's good.
interacting with.
So, anyway, how are you today? You're a little bit breaking up. I don't
Oh,
know if you have a better spot or if that's your best spot.
this would be my best spot.
It's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
That's okay. I'm in my best spot, which is my kid's bedroom. So, um, there's a lot of bad spots, but this one's pretty good. How are you
Oh,
today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Pretty good. So I have a question. So
Yes.
Artemis is how you pronounce your name. So have I been mispronouncing the goddess's name all these years?
No, Artemis is the more common
Okay.
pronunciation, and it's the pronunciation for the goddess.
Okay.
And I was named after Artemis, but my mom always called me Artemis,
Interesting.
and it's a whole long, convoluted story. But yeah, I'm Artemis, but Artemis is a correct
Okay.
pronunciation.
Because I was like, wow, because I remember the filmmaker who made Minnows, whose name I'm not going to be able to come up with right now. He said your name, and I
James.
was James, and I was like, wait a minute, that's not how I how I would have imagined it. So so that must be a fun struggle that you face on a daily basis.
I mean, most of the time, unless it's somebody that like specifically asks or somebody that I'm close to, I don't
You
correct
just
most
let them.
people unless they say it's like some crazy way. If they say Artemis, I'm fine. If they say Artemis or something ridiculous, I'll be like, where did you even get that? Because I do get people saying it kind of random ways sometimes, but
I'm sure.
Artemis I don't correct because I'm just like,
Okay.
that would take a lot of energy, and I'm just like not going to correct every single person.
You have to choose, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's only so much you can do in a day. I realize, like, especially, don't know. I feel like life right now is particularly trying and
Yes.
exhausting,
Yes.
and so you really have to choose. Um,
Yes. I agree.
all right. Well, is there anything that you want to say or do before you read your poem? Are you
Um,
good to go?
I think I'm good to go.
Okay, great.
Okay. Ready?
Yep.
All right. Okay. So I am from VCRs, from store brands and semi-sweet chocolate chips. I am from the mobile home, rectangular, metal. It felt like an oven. I am from ivy, the mustard flowers, a field of cheerful yellow as far as I could see. I am from defying tradition and rebellion and heartbreak, from Solomia and Lucinda. I am from keeping family business private and reading all day. From you will go to college, and help always has strings attached. I am from abandoned Catholicism, occasional church visits with friends, be a good person for the sake of being good, not because someone told you to be. I am from California. Spaghetti with canned tomato sauce, instant coffee. I am from forging your own path, from my mother dropping out of high school because you only send girls to college so she can find a better husband, from her driving a taxi in the South in the 80s, from moving back to California for the schools. From the way you talk about your mother, she must have been a great person. Well, she was an interesting person. I see her influence rippling through my life every day, both good and bad. I sometimes imagine her in another timeline sent to college by her family when she asked. It's wishful thinking that would have fixed everything. I am from a lot of wishing.
Thank you. So beautiful.
Thank you.
I think that the college piece, that was certainly something that was said to my mother. She did go to college because they had the means to do that. But I do feel like that was just what people said a lot of
Yeah.
times, that the learning was not enough of a reason.
Yeah. And like my mom, she would have gone to college in the 60s, maybe early 70s if she had gone at the like normal
Right.
18, 19 years old. And like she grew up in a middle class Catholic family in San Diego. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like it just wasn't something they really considered a norm. I don't think even the men in my family
Mm-hmm.
at
Yeah.
that time had college degrees, although I think my mother's brother went to college. Um, but yeah, it was something that, like, she only told me that once, but it, like, sank in so much that I remembered it, and I could, like, it really kind of resonated with her, and all the times where she was very adamant that I would go to college, which has been, like, a challenging journey for me, but all the time she was like, you will go to college to me, I was like, I could feel the whole denial of college for her
Mm-hmm.
behind that.
Yeah. And you have gone to college. Have you graduated?
I'm in the process. I graduate in about a month and a
Oh,
half.
congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, and to do it later in life, I think, is a particular accomplishment when you're not just going along with what,
With what you were told,
yeah.
yeah. And when it's like, because I'm going to CSULA, which tends to kind of serve lower income students or students with first generation
Yeah.
or lower income backgrounds. So, like, I can see a lot of my fellow students having their own challenges, but even so, the majority of them have some sort of support because they're still 18, 19,
Yeah.
20 something.
Yeah.
And at that point in your life, even when you're low income, you usually have more support from family. But when you're nearly
Mm-hmm.
40, like I'm able to go to college in part because I have more support right now than I have in my past. But it's a different challenge when you're in your mid 30s to try to go to college and still support yourself.
Yes, definitely. And I think when you're younger, even when you're low income, oftentimes you're living at home or you have some, like you say, support. Or, and I
Yeah,
think for a lot of first generation college students, it is a thing that their family is determined to do and give to them.
yeah,
And so they're
yeah,
willing to do what they need to do to make that happen. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, colleges, I just thought it was an interesting thing to, because I think there is a lot of, there are people now who are saying, "Oh, college, who needs it? You can learn everything you want on the internet," and da da da. And I often feel like that's coming from people who've been to college and have had the opportunities, um, who are less concerned with other people having those same opportunities. And I understand it's very expensive. Trust me, I understand
yeah. Well, I
college.
think it's a little bit of a mix. I mean, I think
Yeah,
in my experience, it's a little bit of a mix. I think when you've been to college and you had that opportunity, it gives you like a different place that you're standing. I do know people who didn't go to college who were successful.
yeah,
And also, like, I think the argument about college, like, it's also springs a little out of the devaluation of trade schools, because trade schools are oftentimes a form of higher education, but they're not treated that way. And right now we have a shortage of a lot of tradespeople because we haven't been valuing trade schools the same way that we value socially, that we value an academic education. So I don't want to say that college is the only pathway. I do think it's the right pathway for me. I think everyone is capable of going to college, and if it's what they want, they should be able to.
Yeah.
But I don't think that we should pigeonhole, like, going to college as the only way to be successful.
Agree.
And I also, one thing I do get annoyed with like college and everybody's attitude towards it is everybody thinks about it just as you need it in order to get a better job, which in many cases is true, but it's also like the experience of college is so much as well about growing as a human being and becoming better within our society, being a more informed person within our society so that we can function well within our society, so that we can function well within, hopefully we're still in a democracy. So I think with college we a little overemphasize academic college for getting a better job. We underemphasize what else academic college can provide to us just as a society, and we underemphasize the values of other forms of education, as well as like treating people who maybe just get a high school education well, and like knowing that they deserve to have decent paying jobs as well. I remember my mom telling me when she dropped out of high school, but at the time she was going to high school, if you graduated high school, you could get a pretty good job and pay your bills and not have to go to college if you didn't want to in order to pay your bills. And it's something that I think we've lost a little bit over the last few decades.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot conversation about, I mean, there's the middle class is shrunk to basically not existing. And and it's, I think just most people are very nervous about how they're going to pay their bills. And it's difficult when you don't have a safety net to deal with that. To worry that then you could go into life-altering debt just taking care of medical expenses.
Right. Just even going in a ambulance is so expensive.
Yeah, and I think that is a fear that most of us live with. And it's not great. But I think that's how the system is designed, right? For us all to be afraid so that we just go along. And we're less.
Well, I think that's how our current system has evolved. I don't think that's necessarily how it was originally defined. Designed. Designed. Thank you. My brain. I don't think that was necessarily how it was originally designed, but I do think that that's how it is currently evolved.
Yeah, and it's terrible. I'm sorry that your fiance is still paying off an ambulance bill from a year ago.
Hi, Catherine.
Yeah. Well, I also want to talk about the poem, but I think your story is very compelling.
Thank you.
And I just feel like mostly we don't hear from people who have grown up in poverty because it's a certain privilege to be able to be heard. And so I think that you are heard, like that I saw you in a film and I could reach out to you and ask me to join me, like that I was grateful that I could do that.
I appreciate you.
I want to hear your story. So what was it like for you to write this poem?
I mean, it was a little challenging. Like the last part I wrote this morning because I was really sticking on like the memory aspect. And like I have blank spots in my memory that I just don't remember. And I have, like, I didn't want to be like disingenuous, but I didn't want to put like the darkest thing. So I was like, what do I put that's like honest, but not going to just feel like a joy suck?
It's okay to put
So
the darkest thing. I've put many of the darkest. I write one of these a year, and this year I was like, I'm gonna write something that's not so dark, and it was hard because my birthday's in January, and as you know, January in Southern California this year was not great.
no,
Um,
January was crazy.
yeah, it was just so, and I mean, and we still have our home, and I mean, we were one of the lucky ones,
Yeah.
um, and we don't even live in a evacuation zone. Like we were very fortunate, but the grief of being here was palpable, like
Yes.
it was. And yeah, sometimes you're like, okay, I'm going to try to be positive. So I thought that your ending was really poignant for me because I think it is interesting that if you don't go to the darkest places, potentially people are like, well, your mom sounds great. And you're like, well,
Yeah. And that was something I was trying because I had written a bunch about my mom, and then like I've had multiple people say things like, "Oh, your mom sounds great." And
mhm,
she was a very interesting person. She was very intelligent, and like I still love her, but it's also like it was a complicated relationship, and there
yeah,
were mental health issues
yeah,
and a lot of like things that were going on that didn't make it all sunshine and roses. And I wanted to kind of acknowledge that and like acknowledge the two sides
mhm,
of that,
mhm,
because she was great in a lot of ways, but she was also very challenging in a lot of ways. And I just thought, like I've thought about this before, how like we don't talk about the negatives when somebody has passed. There's
mhm,
not, there can be like a point to it, like if
mhm,
you're in therapy or if you're sharing
mhm.
with a loved one, but like there's not a lot of instances where you just talk about like the negatives with people who have passed, or even sometimes people who are still living. Um, so it creates this kind of bias of the picture that you paint of
Mhm,
them,
mhm,
which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it sometimes, at least when people say that to me, it sometimes feels like the complexity of the person that I'm talking about gets lost.
mhm.
And like when somebody says that to me, I'm not going to be like, actually, but it's
I
just
might be like
something.
that. I mean, honestly, because I often say things about my dad that are not positive, and I see people, he's dead, and I see people like, they kind of like, because like you say, there is sort of this unspoken contract that once somebody dies, we just talk about how they were lovely and we miss them. And I don't. I don't miss them.
Well, it's like with my mom too, like I do miss her sometimes, but it's like as I've grown and as there's been more distance with time and as I've healed from various things that I just wasn't acknowledging,
Sure.
it's giving me a more rounded view of the situation. Like where I say that it's wishful thinking that that would have fixed everything. Like if my mom had gone to college, like she would have lived a very different
Sure.
life. Um, Potentially a better life, potentially a life where she would have been surrounded by people who helped her in the ways that she needed. But she also had mental health issues that made her very challenging and made her very resistant to help that didn't like go
Mm-hmm.
exactly the way she felt it should.
Mm-hmm.
So even with a college education, like some of the things that were ultimately the most challenging with my mother may not have been may not have been like rectified.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's a very complicated situation. Like my biological grandmother apparently had similar mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
And like my biological grandmother was a Catholic woman in San Diego in the 40s and 50s, and she apparently had 7 children. And it's like they didn't talk about her mental health issues, so nothing got fixed about it, but they continued to she continued to have children, and she continued to have all of these issues with her life. And even though my mother wasn't raised by her, a lot of that kind of reverberated through her life, and now it's reverberating through my life as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't. know if you've read the book While You Were Out by Meg Kissinger, but I
No.
think you might find it interesting. She's from a very large Catholic family, and she, her mother had, I'm not, 7 kids, quite a few, and had mental health issues, and wanted to stop having children because she was having so many children and it was compromising her mental health. And, the church was like, well, this is what you do. You have
Right.
kids. Um, and, and 2 of Meg's siblings have died by suicide, and just kind of the mental health, all, like you say, it does reverberate through a family, even if you aren't acknowledging it, which they weren't at that time with anybody, you know, it doesn't make it go away. Um, and I grew up, my father was Catholic and my older brothers were raised Catholic. And um, uh, that was certainly the attitude in general, was just, pray on it, or
Yeah.
pretend it's not even happening.
Yeah. And like with my grandmother, like some of the children were out of wedlock, which was very taboo at the time.
Right.
So it's like it was a whole complicated situation, and just not acknowledging, or like just not talking about publicly the mental health aspect.
No, not at
and
all.
and like I only know bits and pieces, so like I don't even have a full full picture of everything, so like that's challenging in itself too.
It is. I mean, I have found in therapy and in conversation with trusted people, like, I've gotten much better at trusting myself and what I remember and what I believe, and that's been a real journey for a long time. Like, I had a harder time believing myself, because you know because people were gaslighting me. So I had a hard time trusting myself, and it has been really healing to start knowing that, like, what I'm reliable, what I remember, how
Right.
it shaped me. It's true for me. It was my truth. It might not be theirs, but it's mine, you
Yeah.
know? And like that takes time to get to, because you have to wade through, I mean, usually in those situations, if you're the one saying, "Hey, this doesn't feel right," there's a lot of people telling you that you're a problem.
Right.
And so to realize you're not a problem, you're actually the one person who's talking about it.
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, like, it takes time and space, and those are also privileges, that you can have those
Yes.
things.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's like time and space has been something that I've struggled to get, and like
yeah,
it's like the way, like I have so many like different types of goals, but what I've realized that they all kind of come down to is needing the time and the space to do them, and the time and the space to have the mental capacity to do
yeah,
them. And it's like that's kind of what I've been striving for a while.
yeah, yeah. Time and space are the best things. I
Yes.
mean, they aren't for sale anywhere. And so I think sometimes don't realize their value, but they're like the thing
Yeah.
that enables us to rest, make real change, know ourselves. Um, and in a way, I think that's what I like about this poem. I think it can create that in the moment that you're doing it. It can kind of create this, like, it does for me, this space, um, to sit with things that, I might not.
Yeah.
Uh, so.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, any other thoughts on the poem or anything else before we wrap up?
Um, I mean, was it was an interesting experience, because like I was pulling all these different memories that I normally just think of like in a bubble, so to speak. I was pulling all these different memories, like the spaghetti with the canned tomato sauce, and the um my mom talking about being a cab driver and things like that. So it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of cool to sort of create this common thread of all of these disparate
Mm-hmm.
memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we are, this has happened to me and it's happened to other people, like sometimes you remember new things because you were saying you have
Yeah.
gaps in your memory. Sometimes
Yeah.
new things will come to us. And I've had other people join me who have gaps in their memory, usually because of grief or trauma. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you know, I hadn't remembered this ever. So
Yeah.
those that to me always feels like a gift, a new memory.
No. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, it's like, oh, yeah, that little piece of me. I mean, I think all these little parts of us, they're real and they appreciate our attention.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy with all of the things that you're doing. So, this was a real pleasure. So, thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. Thank you for having me. This was a pleasure.
Okay, great. I'm glad. Okay, thanks to everyone who joined us. And in the comments, someone asked about the poem, and it will be in the caption when I post this, like right after we finish. So if you missed it, you can watch it or you can read it in the caption. So it's a beautiful poem. Thank you. Bye.